everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to try and make a bit more progress on the intercooler sandwich plate for the Supercharged 1UZ. But if you followed the last video, you would have seen that we mounted it on the car, as you can see there. Not long after finishing that video, I realised that I've hit a bit of a snag, and I'll show you why. So you can see the Supercharger's on there and it looks all pretty snazzy. But the problem with it is that basically I stuffed up when I designed the opening for the Supercharger outlet where it goes onto the sandwich plate. I just went off the raw dimensions of the gasket basically, and the problem with that is, if we can swing around here.
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the fuck is that?
Got some flour laid down here for demonstration, but basically the gasket comes out here and it comes all the way out to this face. Problem with that is the snout actually isn't a sealing surface onto the plate at all. So basically that means that the opening is open to atmosphere. So if I spin this, you can see that it just blows out everywhere. So I'm gonna have to pull the Supercharger back off and try and address that. So without any more stuffing around, let's get it off. Okay, so we've got the Supercharger and the intercooler manifold off. And basically the problem is, and you can see here because I actually cut the gasket to match and I didn't pay any attention while I was doing it, but you can see that the machining face finishes here and it protrudes out past it. So that's where our air leak is there basically. And it didn't leave us much gasket here anyway, so it's probably a good thing that we're going back to address this. So I guess I'm getting a new gasket and we're gonna have to fill that area in over here. So I won't bore you too much with fixing that. So like this, just like that, we've got our repaired intercooler sandwich plate. So it didn't take that much work really. All I did was I cut out a bit of 10mm aluminium to the right profile there on the CNC, laid it in, shimmed it up so it wasn't touching the core here, and then welded it in with the TIG welder, and then buffed it back, and then decked the whole thing in the CNC machine again. That's how we've got this nice sort of rainbowy stripy pattern going on here, so we know it's nice and flat. You can see there's a bit of discoloration just from the welding process, but it gives you the idea of where it got filled in. So with that all being finished, we're finally ready to throw this thing back on the car and hook it all up. So let's get into it. And after all of that, we've got the Supercharger and the intercooler mounted back on the car. So it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And most importantly, no leaks. So that's great. So the next step from here is to do the plumbing. Now, I actually started this project a little while ago before I started filming. So a lot of this is actually already installed on the car, but I'll give you a bit of a run through on what we've got so far. So if we have a look down the front here, try and zoom out. We've already got the heat exchanger mounted right behind our engine oil cooler here. So that's that there. That's from Mace Engineering. It's exactly the heat exchange they use on the L67 Supercharged Commodores when they install their water to air intercooler. Comes out here, we've got a little bracket there. There's a adapter for our temperature sensor. Comes out into our 12-volt pump. It pumps out the top. Comes through these lines here. It will basically feed around. There's a tank to go in here. We'll have a look at shortly. It'll go up around into the back port of the intercooler. The front one will feed out back into the tank, and then the tank will return down through here, through this filter, and then back into the heat exchange. So this is the other part of our kit here, is this tank here. So this is actually a surge tank for a fuel system, but I've had this laying around for a while from an unused project, and I plan to install that right there, and that's going to act as our reservoir to hold the extra capacity for the coolant. I ended up having to make a bit of a board here, because as you can see here, there's a bit of a rib here in the engine bay, and that's where I intend on putting that tank. And it's not level. So luckily recently I bought a 3D printer, so I decided to make a little base to cover that. So this is it here. So it's basically just got that recess in it there, and then that makes sure that sits over that, sort of like that, and then our tank will bolt onto that. Probably could have printed that out of black, but I didn't have any. Grey's all I had at the time, but it'll do. Yeah, so more or less that hose up there into the tank, and then that one there will return through the filter and back into the heat exchange. So with all that laid out, I'll have a go at hooking all this up. Okay, so that portion of the build is now smashed out. The intercooler's on, all plumbed up nicely, filled with coolant and bled, which is a big relief to see this section of the build finally complete. Keen-eyed viewers will also notice, if we zoomed right in here, that shiny new -6 speedflow hose. That's a sign of things to come. We've got our flex fuel tune booked on the 7th of February, I believe it is, and basically we're going to see how much of a performance gain we get out of the intercooler, the E85, and the set of headers that are to go on the car. They're on the bench over there, almost finished. But yeah, basically got a month to finish off all of that stuff and then see what kind of numbers we make. I'm kind of hoping to make around 350 rear wheel horsepower. I reckon that'd be a pretty good number for it. Basically 50 horsepower increase over what we had before. I think that's pretty realistic, and hopefully we can meet those goals. Wish me luck. So with this section of the build all wrapped up, pretty much the last thing for me to do is put these headers on. It's just taken forever because I'm slack, but we're pretty close now. So hopefully within a week or so, I'll be able to get the car running again and we can go do some test laps in it. We need to bed in the new clutch when that goes in too, because the gearbox is currently out to fit the extractors on. But yeah, once that's done, we'll have a video bedding in the clutch and hopefully get a few nice pulls in there, and we can see what kind of intake temps we get with the intercooler on that Eaton M90. It'll be pretty interesting to see what it does before we go to the dyno. It's a shame that we don't see what horsepower numbers it had before we put the extractors and stuff on there, but for the sake of saving money, just doing all of those mods all in one go. So it'll get a dyno pass on the tune day for 98. And that'll give us a good example anyway of how much the temps have dropped and what kind of power increase we get just on 98 octane fuel. And then the big game change will be that E85. Can't wait to see what kind of increase we get with that. And with that as well, it'd be really, really nice if we could rev this thing to 8K. The only thing that's been blocking our ability to rev to 8K is that those intake temperatures were crazy, crazy high, because you've got to remember that Eaton M90 wasn't designed to be on here. And to be making 10 PSI means it's spinning at a phenomenal rate. to produce that kind of boost. And the downside of that is those hot intake temps. So now that we've ported that supercharger and we've got the intercooler on there, the extractors will hopefully help with the flow a little bit to try and lessen the restriction, and that E85 really opens up our opportunities to push the car a little bit harder, because we don't have to worry about detonation so much. So that'll be absolutely awesome if we can rev this thing that bit harder, get that wheel speed up, and just push even harder through those corners. So I'm really looking forward to see what happens there. So now's a pretty good time to wrap up the video, I reckon. If you've enjoyed watching this build, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That really helps. We've been growing pretty good lately. I'm really interested to see how successful we can make this. The more people that follow and the more people that interact, it basically motivates me to try and produce more videos and bring you the content that you enjoy watching, hopefully. So we'll leave that at that for now, and hopefully in the next video, we'll see this thing making some wicked noises. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.